When my father died, I thought grief would be the hardest thing to face. I was wrong. Because the moment his will was read, I realized someone in my own family had forged his last words, and stolen not just his fortune, but his legacy. What they didn't know was that I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I never thought the weight of silence could crush me, but that morning it did. The air inside the hall was heavy with flowers, incense, and unspoken words. My father's coffin lay at the front, draped in white roses, while relatives and friends filed in one by one. They whispered condolences, they offered prayers, but all I could hear was the echo of my own heartbeat. I stood near the corner, away from the crowd, watching. My siblings were there too, my older brother Michael, standing tall with that smug air he never seemed to lose, and my younger sister Emily, her face hidden behind a veil of grief. Father was gone. I tried to remind myself of that. The man who had built an empire with his bare hands, the man who taught me that family was everything, the man who, despite his sternness, loved us more than he ever said aloud, he was gone. But even as I watched his coffin being lowered into the ground, a part of me felt unsettled. Something about his death felt wrong. 3 days after the funeral, we gathered at the law office of Mr. Harrison, my father's longtime attorney. His office smelled of leather and dust, lined with shelves of old case files and heavy law books. "Please sit," he said, gesturing for us to gather around the long wooden table. His voice was solemn, his eyes heavy. "Your father left explicit instructions that his will be read in the presence of all immediate family." We sat, me, Michael, and Emily. Mother had passed away years ago, so it was just us now. Mr. Harrison unfolded the document slowly, adjusting his glasses. "This is the last will and testament of Richard Hayes." I held my breath. He began to read. "To my beloved daughter Emily, I leave the family home in Oak Ridge and her mother's jewelry. To my eldest son Michael, I leave the company's shares, amounting to 60% ownership. To my younger son, Daniel." That was me. My name caught in the air like a thorn. "I leave my blessings and prayers for a bright future." For a moment I thought I had misheard. "Excuse me?" I blurted. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, repeating the words carefully. "To my younger son Daniel, I leave my blessings and prayers for a bright future. No property. No money. No land. Nothing." Michael smirked. Emily gasped softly. My fists clenched. "That's impossible," I said, my voice rising. "My father he wouldn't do this. He always told me the business would be shared fairly between us." Mr. Harrison sighed. "I understand this may be difficult, but these are his words, signed and sealed." "No," I snapped, standing up. "This is wrong. This isn't my father's will." The room grew tense. Michael leaned back in his chair, his smug smile widening. "Well, Daniel, maybe father finally saw who was worthy of carrying his legacy. You were always too soft, too distracted. The company needs a strong hand." "Strong hand?" I shot back. "Or greedy hands?" "Enough," Emily interrupted, tears in her eyes. "Please, this isn't what father would have wanted, for us to fight like this." But I couldn't calm down. The will didn't make sense. Father was a hard man, yes, but he was fair. He built everything from scratch and always said each of us would inherit equally. Why would he suddenly change his mind? That night I couldn't sleep. His words haunted me, my blessings and prayers. That wasn't my father's way of speaking. He was a man of action, not vague sentiments. And then I remembered, just a week before he died, father had called me into his study. "Daniel," he had said, his voice firm, "there are things you need to know about the business. I'll explain soon. Don't let anyone misguide you." But he never got the chance. He was dead 2 days later. Over the next week, I began to notice things. Little things. The signature on the will looked slightly different, too neat, too polished. Father's real signature always had a small flourish at the end, a tilt of the pen that came from years of habit. This one didn't. Then there was Michael. He wasted no time stepping into Father's shoes at the company, calling board meetings, issuing orders, and moving funds. Too fast. Almost like he had been preparing for it. And Emily, she kept avoiding my questions, her eyes filled with something between fear and guilt. One evening I confronted her in her room. "Emily," I said softly, closing the door behind me. "Tell me the truth. Did Father ever mention changing his will?" She hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. "Daniel, maybe he wanted to keep the business in strong hands. You know how Michael is." "Don't do that," I interrupted. "Don't make excuses. Father trusted all of us. He wouldn't have left me with nothing. Did Michael pressure you to stay quiet?" Her silence told me everything. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Emily, if the will is fake, we can't let this go. We owe Father that much." Tears welled in her eyes. She whispered, "Be careful, Daniel. You don't know what Michael is capable of." That night, I sat alone in Father's study, staring at the old wooden desk where he spent countless nights working. The room still smelled of his cologne, still held his presence. I opened the drawers, searching. Papers, ledgers, files. And then, at the very bottom, an envelope with my name on it. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside was a letter, written in Father's handwriting. "Daniel, if you are reading this, it means my time has come sooner than expected. Trust no one blindly. There are snakes even in our own blood. The will you may hear of is not my true word. Look deeper. The truth lies in the red ledger." My breath caught. The red ledger. I had seen it once. Father kept it locked in the company safe. A ledger that, according to rumors, contained the real records of his dealings, his assets, his secrets. If that ledger still existed, it might prove everything. But I also knew this: if Michael had forged the will, he would do everything to destroy the ledger before I found it. And so, my path became clear. I had to find the red ledger. I had to prove the will was fake. And I had to bring down my own brother, before he destroyed me first. The days after finding Father's letter felt like walking on thin ice. Every step I took, every word I spoke, seemed to echo in dangerous territory. I couldn't let Michael know what I had discovered, not yet. But suspicion burned inside me like fire. Father's words haunted me: "Trust no one blindly. The will you may hear of is not my true word." It meant only one thing: someone had tampered with his legacy. And if Michael was behind it, he was more ruthless than I ever imagined. 2 weeks after the funeral, I went to the company headquarters, Hayes Industries, the empire my father had built from nothing. Walking through the glass doors was strange now. Employees looked at me differently, with pity, as though I had been stripped of my worth overnight. Michael's presence had spread like a shadow. His face was already on the company magazine covers, his name at the top of memos. The receptionist glanced at me nervously. "Mr. Daniel, your brother is in the boardroom." I nodded and walked straight past her, my jaw clenched. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I saw him, Michael, standing at the head of the table, addressing the board with a confidence that looked rehearsed. "Moving the funds into overseas accounts will protect us from liability," he was saying. "My father would have wanted us to be aggressive in expansion. Gentlemen, this is how we secure the future of Hayes Industries." I pushed the door open without knocking. Every head turned. Michael's smile faltered for just a moment before he plastered it back on. "Daniel," he said smoothly, "so good of you to join us. Unfortunately, this is a board-level meeting, and since you're not a shareholder—" "You mean since you made sure I wasn't?" I cut in. Gasps rippled around the table. Michael's eyes hardened, but his smile didn't slip. "We're in mourning, brother. Let's not air personal grievances in front of the board." I stepped closer. "I just want one thing, Michael. Where's the red ledger?" For the first time, his face froze. Just a flicker, but I saw it. He covered it quickly. "Father's old paperwork? Irrelevant. Outdated. Probably destroyed." I held his gaze. "Funny. Father seemed to think it was important enough to keep locked away. A tense silence filled the room. Michael finally leaned back in his chair, chuckling. Careful, Daniel. Chasing ghosts will only make you look desperate. But inside I knew I had struck a nerve. That night, I found Emily sitting on the back porch of the house, staring at the dark garden. She looked pale, like someone carrying a secret too heavy for her. Emily, I said gently, sitting beside her. You know something. Tell me. Her hands trembled in her lap. Daniel, I don't know everything. But the night before Father died, he called me into his study. He told me to stay close to you, that you would need me. I frowned. Did he say why? She shook her head. He looked afraid. I've never seen him like that. And then 2 days later he was gone. I stared into the night. Father hadn't just died. He had been silenced. Emily grabbed my arm. Michael is dangerous. Don't provoke him. If he knows you're digging, he already knows, I muttered. And that's why I have to move faster than him. The company safe was in Father's old office on the top floor. Michael had claimed it as his own now, but I knew the room better than anyone. I had spent nights there, helping Father go through files, watching him write in the red ledger. I waited until midnight, when the building was nearly empty. Using the spare access card Father once gave me, I slipped inside. The office felt colder without him. His leather chair, his old desk, everything looked the same yet wrong. I went straight to the safe. The code was Father's birthday. My hands shook as I typed it in. Click. The door opened. Inside were stacks of documents, folders, and there it was. The red ledger. I pulled it out, my heart pounding. The cover was worn, the pages thick with ink and numbers. It was more than a ledger. It was a map of Father's empire, showing assets, accounts, hidden deals, and names. One page stopped me cold. A list of transactions signed off not by Father, but by Michael. Amounts shifted. Property sold. Funds disappearing into accounts I didn't recognize. And then I saw it, a payment to a man I knew too well. Thomas Grant. Thomas had been Father's notary, the man responsible for signing and validating documents, including wills. I didn't sleep that night. The red ledger's pages burned in my mind like fire. Numbers, signatures, payments, all pointing to one truth: Michael had stolen Father's empire with a forged will. But knowing the truth wasn't enough. The hardest part was deciding what to do with it. If I went straight to the police, Michael would deny everything. His influence, his lawyers, his money, they'd bury the case before it even began. If I confronted him openly, he'd destroy me. And if I did nothing, my father's legacy would be lost forever. I needed a plan. But I also needed someone I could trust. The next morning, I went to Emily's room. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at a photo of Father. Emily, I said quietly, I know the truth now. Michael forged the will. He paid Thomas Grant, the notary, to make it official. Her eyes widened. You're sure? I handed her my phone with the photos from the ledger. These are the records. It's all here. She scrolled through the images, her hands shaking. Tears filled her eyes. Daniel, what are we going to do? We? I asked, watching her closely. She looked up at me, her face pale but determined. Father asked me to stay close to you. I won't betray that. Tell me what to do. For the first time since Father's death, I felt a flicker of hope. We need Thomas. I said. If I can get him to confess, if I can prove he was paid to forge the will, Michael will have no defense. Emily nodded. Then we find him. Finding Thomas wasn't hard. He worked out of a small office downtown, a quiet man who had always been more comfortable with papers than people. When I walked in, he froze. His glasses slipped down his nose as he stood quickly, his face turning pale. Daniel, he stammered. I'm so sorry about your father. I closed the door behind me. Save it. You know why I'm here. His hands shook as he adjusted his glasses. I don't know what you mean. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo of the payment from Michael's account. You took his money. You forged the will. I have the proof. Thomas's face crumbled. He sank into his chair, covering his face with his hands. I didn't want to. He whispered. Michael threatened me. He said if I refused, he'd ruin me, ruin my family. I had no choice. Then make the right choice now, I said firmly. Sign a statement. Confess. Testify that Michael forced you. He hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. If I do that, he'll kill me. He won't have the chance. I said. I'll protect you. But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. That night, Emily and I sat together, planning our next move. If Thomas agrees to testify, she said, we can go straight to Mr. Harrison. He'll know how to take this to court. I nodded. Tomorrow morning. We'll do it then. But in the middle of the night, I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. At first, I thought it was nothing. But then I heard voices. Low. Urgent. I crept to the door and cracked it open. Emily was standing at the end of the hall, with Michael. My stomach dropped. Daniel suspects everything. Emily was whispering. He found the ledger. He went to Thomas. He's planning to go to Mr. Harrison tomorrow. Michael's face was dark, but a thin smile curled at his lips. You did the right thing telling me. Father always said you were loyal. I felt like the floor had been ripped out beneath me. Emily. My sister. The one person I thought I could trust. She had betrayed me. The next morning, Michael summoned me to Father's study. He sat behind the desk, his fingers tapping against the red ledger. My blood ran cold. You didn't think I'd find out? He said, his voice smooth as silk. Emily told me everything. Poor Daniel, always chasing shadows. Always too naive for his own good. I glared at Emily, who stood in the corner, her face pale. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Michael leaned forward. You see, little brother, this company was never meant for you. Father knew you were weak. That's why he left you nothing. I slammed my hands on the desk. That will is fake, and you know it. I have the proof. The payment's Thomas's confession. Thomas is dead. Michael interrupted. The words hit me like a blow. What? I whispered. Michael smirked. Car accident last night. Tragic, really? The world is unpredictable. I staggered back, my chest tight. He had killed Thomas. And Emily had led him straight to me. The next morning, Michael summoned me to Father's study. He sat behind the desk, his fingers tapping against the red ledger. My blood ran cold. You didn't think I'd find out? He said, his voice smooth as silk. Emily told me everything. Poor Daniel, always chasing shadows. Always too naive for his own good. I glared at Emily, who stood in the corner, her face pale. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Michael leaned forward. You see, little brother, this company was never meant for you. Father knew you were weak. That's why he left you nothing. I slammed my hands on the desk. That will is fake, and you know it. I have the proof. The payment's Thomas's confession. Thomas is dead. Michael interrupted. The words hit me like a blow. What? I whispered. Michael smirked. Car accident last night. Tragic, really? The world is unpredictable. I staggered back, my chest tight. He had killed Thomas. And Emily had led him straight to me. Michael stood, circling me like a predator. Here's how this ends, Daniel. You leave. You disappear. Take the little blessings and prayers Father left you, and go live a quiet life. If you stay, you won't survive. Something inside me snapped. I thought of Father, of his stern but kind eyes. Of his words, trust no one blindly. Look deeper. I thought of everything Michael had stolen. And I knew I couldn't walk away. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. Funny thing about technology, brother. I said, my voice steady. Conversations can be recorded. Michael froze. I tapped the screen. His voice, cold, damning, played back clearly, Thomas is dead. Car accident. The world is unpredictable. Emily gasped. Michael's face darkened with rage. You little bastard! He hissed, lunging across the desk. We crashed to the floor, grappling, fists flying. Years of resentment, jealousy, and hatred exploded in that moment. He was stronger, but I was faster. I fought like my life depended on it, because it did. Emily screamed, but I barely heard her. Finally, I slammed him against the desk, my forearm at his throat. This ends now, I growled. Police sirens wailed outside. Michael's eyes widened. He realized too late. The call had already gone through. Everything he had confessed, every word, had been sent to the authorities. Michael was arrested that night. Fraud. Forgery. Murder. His empire of lies crumbled as quickly as it had risen. Emily tried to explain, to apologize. She claimed Michael had manipulated her, threatened her. Maybe it was true. Maybe not. But the bond between us was broken forever. As for me, I inherited not wealth, but something greater, the truth. Father's real will was never recovered. But the court recognized the fraud, and Michael's shares were frozen, the company placed under new management. I didn't fight for control. I didn't want it anymore. What I wanted, what I needed, was peace. One evening, I stood in Father's study, holding the red ledger. I ran my fingers over the worn cover, feeling the weight of his legacy. I did it, Father, I whispered. I exposed him. He won't destroy what you built. I set the ledger back in the safe and locked it. Then I walked out, leaving the house behind me. The battle was over. The war within my family had ended in blood and betrayal. But I had survived. And I had kept my father's truth alive.